All right. Good evening, everyone. We should get going as it's a little past 6. Just wanted to thank each and every one of you for joining us for our first joint legislative update for this year, actually. We completed the legislative session about a month ago. Since then, I know a handful of us are starting to catch up on some emails. Took some personal time after what was very, very, very busy and on so many different issues, successful legislative session. But just want to thank you all for the opportunity to represent you. My name is Aundre Bumgardner. I have the privilege of representing the 41st House District, which consists of the southern half of Groton, from the city of Groton, the Thames River, all the way to the Groton side of Mystic, south of 95, and the southwestern corner of Stonington, from the Stonington side of Mystic all the way to the Pawcatuck border. I'm joined by Rep. Gaiewski and Rep. Nolan, so I'll pass it off to Rep. Gaiewski.
Thank you, Representative Bumgartner. I am Rep. Dan Gaiewski, newly elected in a special election this February. I represent the 40th District, which is the northern half of Groton, which is North Groton City, and then north of I-95, and then the southern half of New London, going along. I'm on the other side of the railroad tracks down, so I call the district the Square Root District. So meeting wonderful folks, had a great first session, did a lot of good things, and I'm happy to help you in any way you can. My email, not my staff's email, is on my website at dan.gaiewski@cga.ct.gov. So please feel free to email me at any time, and I'm happy to assist you or answer any questions or hear any legislative priorities / ideas you may have. And I will toss it off to my good New London colleague, Representative Nolan.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming, Representative Nolan, as you mostly know. Just have New London only. I don't have the pleasure of having any place else other than New London. So I'm enjoying just having my one town and my couple of districts in my town. So, and as the two have mentioned, we're really available. So if you really have things that you want to ask about or things that you're concerned about, please do not hesitate to reach out. Doesn't matter if I'm just in New London or if they're Groton and New London or just Groton or Stonington. We all work as a team, and we all will confide in one another to make sure that we're doing the best for our communities in this area.
Yeah, to piggyback off that, we talked every day together on the legislative session. I made sure to go talk to Rep. Nolan and made sure to go talk to Rep. Bumgardner as well. And then, for example, sometimes, having multiple representatives in a town, sometimes individuals mix up their district representatives. So if you reach out to me and you're not my district, I'll connect you with Rep. Bumgardner's office. So just, and vice versa, same way. Yeah. So we're happy to help and we're ready to serve.
And there's so many things that are getting passed up there that we really confide in each other for, especially things that are in their committees, because sometimes we don't have an opportunity to always read a complete bill with the many bills that are going on. We try our best to, but we really depend on one another, especially if it's one of our own committees, to make sure that we share some of the priorities from our towns, from our constituents, to make sure that those things are paid attention by all of us, not just one of us. Should we do it committees too?
All right.
Should be good. Does anybody have any pressing questions or pressing concerns that they would like us to know or the greater whole to know to start off?
Way in the back.
I saw the gentleman in the way in the back. I met him earlier. Hello.
Hi. Hello, my name is Chris. A couple of things real quick, if I may. One of the big one is the veterans tax deductions and how some tax assessors are denying them because of miscommunications of how they read the bill and how someone else reads the bill. So I think I talked to Dan and Mr. Nolan there about this already. Two other small things. One is more for Dan and yourself, and I talked to the council member, Ms. Rusk over here about it. is I live right behind Rainville. And in the mornings, I'm sorry, but the EV employees are not to say the friendliest drivers. They go roaring down at loud noises at 5, 6 o'clock in the morning. And then it is very difficult to get out when they close. I had to use Benham and Rainville to get out, and there's no turn lane to go from Benham. I know this is a state road because 349, Rainville, and Eastern Point Road belongs to the state, but I don't know if we can look into maybe a sound barrier. I got my next door neighbor that literally lives about 10 feet from the road. And he had a hard time renting out one of the apartments in that building because of the noise. And maybe there can be a sound barrier wall put up or something, but they went through and they cut down all the trees for the power lines that heads to EV, and of course that blocked a bunch of the noise before they cut it all down. And but it's very difficult if you ever want to go down there at like 2 o'clock to 4 o'clock. Most of the residents don't even leave. We recently had to get city parking passes to park in front of our own houses. And the passes actually have our street name on it. And my next door neighbor has already been, her people out front of her home from where she works in New London, gawking at her because of the sticker that has the street name. And that's because the city was like, well, we don't want people that live on Elderkin to drive down to West Elderkin and park. But then, of course, the city doesn't have the cops, the police officers, to enforce any of the traffic control because they're bound by 3 vehicles, or 3 officers. And then I guess my last issue that I'm having is the bottle deposit. I understand that we went from 5 cents to 10 cents to make an environmental impact, but I don't know if you noticed on the streets, people still throw them, and then returning them. And there are most people that say the reason they don't take them back is because returning them, especially in New London County, is a pain. Most stores will sell the product, but then they won't take it back because they don't want, if the machine doesn't take it, sometimes it takes 6 to 8 months to actually get it, the barcode into the machine, so then they pile up everywhere and they end up in the trash anyway. So there's a lot of issues with the bottle deposit thing. So I just like to get that all on record, but the tax exemption is my big point. And like I said, we talked about that, and I'm going to send you guys more information.
Yeah, 100%.
I do appreciate it.
No problem. And we're happy to help in that. When it comes to nip bottle cleanup, I have done this twice already. I've had other constituents from out the area, they have called me. If it is a state road, DOT will actually come by and do a street cleaning of it, and it'll clean some of it up. So if you ever have a state road and you just let me know the state road and shoot me an email, I can have DOT out there within a couple.
Well, it's more about the noise.
And the okay.
Driving at like 5 o'clock in the morning, they come down 349 in the Harleys and the Mustangs and the Camaros that are very loud, and they downshift all the way to the light at Rainville, and then they gun on it. I know Mr. Hendricks is working on trying to get the cameras, but it wakes people up. I mean, luckily my dogs wake me up at 5 o'clock in the morning, but my neighbors, and I've had, I got people that live across the street that have children, and it wakes them up. And then the kids start screaming because of the noise. It's really bad, and then the traffic is just horrible. They don't change, their lights aren't long enough, they don't change for that period of time so that so the traffic just builds up tremendously.
I'll tackle your bottle deposit comment. As you mentioned, a couple years ago, the redemption rate increased from 5 cents to 10 cents per bottle or can. So now if you're to redeem your can or bottle at a reverse vending machine, which you can find at a grocery
Well, yeah, I
store.
understand that, and I actually return bottles for, a good friend of mine works at a, elderly care center, and we return the bottles, and then the money goes to, Alzheimer's research. So I'm very common, but.
Of course,
the thing
I'm
is that-
I'm illustrating it for the public, because not
Yeah.
everybody may know what
Like,
redemption
you can buy
rates are.
bottles at certain places, and nobody takes them back, but you're still paying the deposit.
Right,
Not even the places that sell the bottles, because they don't want to take the bottles, or if they do take it back, they just go right in the trash can like Walmart does. So they're not getting recycled.
no, and that's why it's highly dependent on where you do bring your can to. More times than not, it really needs to be brought back to the, as you mentioned, the place you purchased
the.
the,
Go and get the water from WB, WB Mason, you pay the deposit on it.
right,
But you cannot take the bottles back anywhere. Nowhere takes them, not even WB.
no,
So
so,
there's an issue,
yeah.
so where's that money go?
So there are some places you can bring it to, redemption centers, and that was the whole crux of the effort to increase the bottle deposit. Now we're starting to see more redemption centers popping up, but here's sort of the kind of catch-22 of it. When you start building these redemption centers that can take sort of in bulk these bottles or cans that have the deposit on them, it has elicited some out-of-state fraud, especially considering that we are on a border state, for example. In a state actually, we border Rhode Island, a state that doesn't even have a bottle bill on the books.
Right.
So, say if you were to buy a 12-pack of Diet Coke, you're going to actually get $1.20 worth of that in redemption value here in Connecticut. So so there are ways that you can redeem your bottles. We can talk offline to kind of go over just out of respect to the group who may have more questions. But yes, happy to connect with you after. I know my colleague to the far left has been working on the property tax issue with respect to veterans for some time, so I will defer to him on that issue since he's worked so hard on it as well.
So when it comes to the veterans' property tax, this year, as you can see in the packet that we gave out, the law substantially modifies the veterans' property tax exemption. A couple people, as you did, brought up the problems that they're having with some of the towns in regards to honorable and under-honorable mentions on your DD 214. If I'm not mistaken, it says under honorable in the policy that was written or in the laws that were written.
Correct.
But I need to just verify that, and then if you could send me an email for that reminder, because
Yeah, I will.
we don't want it to be too vast of an opportunity for people just to give their personal opinion versus what it says in the directive. I would believe that if it says under and honorable on your DD 214, that would include you in that provision. So I will check on that.
Like myself, I received all my other benefits from the state.
Correct.
I received the free tuition to go to school to get a award that, and I utilized that. And but since I moved into the town has been very, I live in the city, but since I, live in the town that collects the taxes, it has become very difficult to get anything
Understood.
from the town that is the submarine capital of the world.
Yeah, and just so those who might not have read, we've added the provision where it can give you up to, I think it's 2 acres on your property, and also it added in there, I believe it was survivor benefits for spouses when determining income for certain means tested by public assistance also. So, but any further questions that anybody has about veterans, you can reach out to any of us, and if one of us can't answer it, then they'll check with one of the other up here to help out.
Yeah, and then a circle to as the income and then the 2 acres, those are municipal options. So the
Yeah.
municipality has to opt into that through a ordinance, I believe. And then to circle back to your noise, off of Rainville coming out of EB, I could certainly reach out to Mayor Hedrick and DOT about possibly getting a sound barrier there. You are not the first constituent to complain to me about that. So, so yeah, and I have constant communication. We're constantly looking at those issues as well. So, no problem. Anybody else? I saw a couple other hands before that.
Roscoe.
Councilor Merritt.
Yes, my name is Roscoe Merritt. I am a Groton Town Councilor. I have a question and some information. The question is basically a broad statement of how's the school funding going?
I'll take that.
Are you already
So,
appropriate at this point?
yeah, that's so it's on. If you everybody turn, I actually flagged it in here. It is on page. If everybody goes to their packets on page. Wow. Environment. If it is on page 8 of 2022 of the packets, it goes to ECS funding, hold harmless. So currently Groton and New London, I don't know if Stonington's in there too, but Groton and New London are what in the state formula, which is the education cost sharing formula, which is a incredibly large math problem that determines how much state aid your school system receives. Based on that formula, Groton is overfunded by $10 million, and I believe New London is about $2 million overfunded. So what we do as legislators is we added in the overall budget bill of the state of Connecticut a hold harmless provision, which means that we are just flat funded in our education funding from the state of Connecticut. So that was a really big ask of the delegation. So we ended up getting that, so it is good. Groton will be receiving its $25 million that they have received for years, and hopefully will continue to do so. It is in language for FY27 as well. When it comes to federal government cuts, recent reporting that I saw for Groton and New London, it was about roughly between $200,000 and $500,000 for an expectation of that. I do not know if the legislator is going to come back in a special session later in the year to address those cuts. It's something that, I know I'm asking for. I don't know about if my colleagues are joining me in that, but it's something that we are mindful of and we are aware of. But overall, from what was expected of DOGE and what we got out of the state budget, I would say that our education funding is as best as we can get as of now. Of course, I think I'd like to potentially get more money because we've been flat funded for years, but it's just something that we're working through, and we're good for where we're at right now. So no major changes that need to be expected on an education funding standpoint.
Thank you, Councilor, for your question. $25 million in ECS funding, an additional $227,000 in the form of seed, which is a special education excess grant that was created in the aftermath of the legislature passing a comprehensive special education reform bill as well. So that's additional dollars that are going to our Board of Ed for specifically special education cost reimbursement as well, to the tune of $227,000 each fiscal year. So almost $500,000. A little over $500,000.
I think that's where we were falling short was in special ed.
Yeah.
So that should help.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was one of the reasons. I mean, I serve as a appointee to the State Advisory Committee on Special Education. So I met with many parents of special ed children, and that was one of the main things that they were hearing was, their child was eligible and needed certain services, but school boards were falling short and they were actually having to contract out. So some of this funding is actually going to go fund those needed services in district, and we don't have to go out and contract it out. now. And then we also, in that special education bill that my good colleague Representative Bumgardner, there is now more requirements on the schools to notify parents if there are any changes in services for their child, and if there is a changer of the provider of the service. So, for example, if their special education teacher has to go out on leave, the parent is to be notified as well. So there is that greater transparency between school and parent as well.
And we're almost sure we're going to go back to special session, or I know, just from the dialogue that we're having. And I know myself, I want to encourage leadership to open it up for other things that we want to deal with, because I know one of the popular things is housing. But I want to also hopefully see mental health in our youth crisis centers added to changes that we need to make, hopefully. Be difficult, but there's some of the things I'll be mentioning to our leadership.
I saw Counselor Good had his hand up as well.
Pretty good. Appointed seat, I guess, town council, correct? Two things I just want to quickly put in front of you. You mentioned housing, and I know that both Groton and New London are seeing an exponential growth in rental units, and it's very hard thing to appreciate property rights and landlord rights, but I'm hoping we can get some more conversation about rental increases, ways to get more affordable housing as these new developments come in, just to keep that conversation open, because it's a tough one to have, I realize. We are looking at potentially Groton and New London being over 50% rentals within the decade, so it's definitely a problem that's going to rise. I deal with it all the time myself.
Yeah.
Also, just wondering what the state is doing to safeguard housekeeping for kids. I know that Medicaid is kind of unsure grounds right now, and it would be good to hear some additional words from our legislators.
So in the middle of session, we got some unfortunate news that we were over our estimated budget from FY25 in Medicaid funding. So we did allocate some money to cover that gap, so nobody was losing their insurance. The estimates is that 186,000 Connecticut residents are going to be losing their insurance. We would have to go back into special session to adjust that. From the feeling I'm getting, there is a desire to do that. And the discussion would come in is that funding would come from the rainy day fund, which is currently between $4 and $5 billion, and the estimated cost is at the maximum $1.5 billion. So we do have that money to address some of the potential Medicaid cuts that could be coming down from the federal government. So do my colleagues have anything else they'd like to add?
Definitely, I can cover, for example, some of the changes that took place as a result of this quote-unquote big beautiful bill. Completely eviscerates the social safety net that has existed for decades in this country, safety net to protect our most vulnerable, in particular children. And these cuts are going to hurt Connecticut families, no matter how you spin it. It's very unfortunate. We're very lucky. We have a congressman and two senators who are in constant communication with state legislators, including our local delegation. All three of us were in very close communication with Congressman Courtney last week to go over what the impact is. But these Medicaid cuts, SNAP cuts, for example, which is also connected to public health. The SNAP cuts in particular, I mean, we are gutting food nutrition programs, and far worse, now states are going to have to contribute a percentage of the cost to SNAP programming. So if one of our constituents is on SNAP, now Connecticut is going to have to contribute up to 15% of that cost. We've never had to contribute towards SNAP. And now that's going to have an impact on our state budget because we haven't accounted for that in this fiscal year. These are changes that could very well go into effect before the fiscal year ends. So our staff is starting to go through all of these draconian cuts that we've seen over the last, since Washington passed this bill and Trump signed HR 1 into law. But just with respect to some of the Medicaid changes, so adults 19 through 64 will be required to engage in at least 80 hours per month of work or community engagement to remain eligible for Medicaid. Acceptable activities to meet the requirement. Monthly income that is at least 80 times the federal hourly minimum wage, $7.25. It provides exemptions for the work from the work requirement for the following people: pregnant individuals, foster and former youth, Indians or Native Americans, and veterans with rated disabilities. But with that said, it has eliminated the exemption for any veteran whatsoever. And it also basically eliminates any form of coverage for individuals who are undocumented. And many of these folks who have gone through even some kind of process to, be here legally or get onto a pathway to citizenship. So I've been hearing kind of, each, day in and day out from constituents, whether they are on SNAP they are on Medicaid, or they provide services, to constituents that have Medicaid, whether they're medical professionals or not. And there is I think, a huge cause of concern right now in terms of ensuring that public health is protected. So I'll pass it on to one of my colleagues.
Yeah, I think that we did give a boost to boost to Medicaid to continue so that they can continue to give services that might be hit by this big, beautiful bill. I think it says it covers about 260,000 patients at community health centers, and it should take effect by October 1st. And it's retroactive to July 1st. So it helps stabilize staffing and restore some services. And Representative Bumgardner mentioned the big, beautiful bill, and one of the things that I'm getting calls about are children around the age of 14 being part of that 80-hour work week, or 80-hour month. And I think that is just so ridiculous, because you got a single parent, let's say hypothetically, with 3 kids, and 2 of the kids are under 10, and then you got a 14-year-old. That kid's required to do work. So, the mother is going to end up having to either take time off of work now so that she can support that 80-hour need for that 14 and above student. I'm just so surprised that was able to get across. Well, actually not surprised, but very agitated. Sometimes I'll sit there and it's just going to eat away at some of our lower income. And you mentioned about housing, affordable housing.
I come up and kind of faded away last year.
Yeah.
I was hoping.
One of the things I am glad to see a lot of the affordable housing going up, because New London and Groton is definitely making moves and being the blueprint for other towns to see how it can happen. My concern is that that's affordable for those who can only afford it. You have those that are of a lower income, and then those of low income that are not able to reach in their pockets deep enough to pay for that housing. So as disappointed as I was with the governor vetoing the housing bill, I really don't feel like that housing bill had enough in it to help those that are in most dire need. And I really think I'm one of the ones for going into that rainy day fund and the fund balance to take funding out that can help with low income getting housing that is affordable to them, because we're not getting out of our housing crisis with the affordable housing that's going up. That's just taking place for those, like I said, that can afford it. And we're opening the door for a lot of our EB hires and General Dynamic hires, which is good because we're bringing more people into our communities to help with the economic stability and help our businesses and restaurants in town. But I really feel like we need to put some money aside to the Commissioner of DOH, more money, because she's barely being able to do what we need in order to make that housing available.
Right, I think at this point, you know, talking to some developers, navigating the various grants and loans that they could get is a little difficult for us. So I'm hoping at least that we can find a way to open that up to make it a little more appetizing.
Yeah, and I think also we need to have further discussion in regards to zoning. You know, some of our planning and zoning teams in our communities, we need to come to some better agreements or better understanding of what we have to do to make sure that we can make the amount of housing available that we need available. And that also is including the accessory dwelling stuff and the parking for people to have accessory dwellings. Sometimes the required amount of parking is a little overkill. I understand the dynamics of it, but I think that when we're trying to make it benefit those that are without, sometimes we have to change the rules in order to make it happen, as long as it doesn't put anybody in danger.
Circle back. Rep Nolan mentioned some grants got mentioned. We write letters of support for grant applications. So if you know any developer, nonprofit, municipality in the area that is applying for a grant with the state of Connecticut, let us know and we can write a letter of support to the agency that you're applying with and have communication, knowing that if it's going to help our area, we'd love to support it. I do it all the time. So if you do know anybody, please feel free to reach out to us, and I'm happy to write a letter of support. I know we've written letter of supports together, and have follow up in helping secure that grant, because at the end of the day, it does help our community. I saw this individual over here raise their hand and have a question.
This is actually along the same topic with the housing. My name is Jessica Dark. I'm actually in your district.
Nice to meet you.
It is on the housing, and what I'm wondering is, are we going to do something about investors and outside corporations buying homes, which now prices people out from getting their first house? Zillow is buying them, other companies are buying them, and then proceeding to rent them out, and now people can't buy a home because the prices go up.
It did come up for discussion. Unfortunately, housing had so many bills. A lot of bills were knocked out of committee or didn't make it through committee. But I can tell you that will be part of the discussion for our next session. Unfortunately, it won't be probably the special session, but it will be up for discussion on how we can, create something to help with that. It is from the discussions that we had, it is very challenging because a lot of the corporations that are buying these bulk houses are not buying it under the corporation always. They're buying it under a sub corporation, which does not identify them until later on.
LLCs, shell companies.
Correct.
Anything to hide the money.
So it's very challenging to identify that until later on, and they start putting some kind of identifier up that says that they're part of some corporation. But I would recommend sending an email
To me.
to Dan, just to put that on his list, and then he'll let us know.
I mean, even something as simple as saying, I'm declaring I'm buying this as an individual for my personal
Yes.
use.
Yeah.
Like when I bought my house on Monument, I had you say that I am not buying this for the purpose of business.
Mhm. And I don't know if there's a policy that states that enforces that, though. That could be just a request of some towns, but I don't know if it's an actual policy. And Dan, you did mention something about grants and doing letters. There's almost no time that a letter is written that we're not trying to join one another's letter. And that's how we maintain having each other's support, because backing each other like that is really important, because our delegation is not always big as the other delegations. So we tend to make sure that we're all supportive of one another's communities to make sure that those things can happen.
To circle back to your concern, I do know that one of the concerns in the discussion was there was, and this was where the resistance was, and this is where we're trying to kind of navigate it. I totally agree with you. But the concern was as well, I should be able to sell my house for the maximum price that I can get it for, and the free market principle. So there is kind of like, there are certain things that you can put in certain you can allow local planning and zoning commissions to put in certain restrictions. So there are things that kind of have to work out. I know there was, with short-term rentals, there was a federal court case that made it really restrictive to prohibit short-term rentals. And we were trying, I know Rep. Bumgardner and I know we invited you to sign on to the bill, that created a short-term rental registration program within the state, so you could potentially limit the amount of short-term rent, so that municipalities could eventually limit the amount of short-term rentals that were coming into the area, which would help with the corporate buy-ups. So just, stuff to think about. We're constantly working. We're in a national housing crisis. So that national housing crisis is, affected here in the state of Connecticut. I talked to the commissioner of housing. The estimate that Connecticut needs 90,000 to 120,000 units now to fill our needed workforce and help stabilize the rapid increase in rents. But there's also the capital that's needed, the space that's needed, and getting somebody to actually do it, so that there was a goal to kind of get 25% of it, which is, because trying to do it all in one full swoop, the market could change rapidly in a year, so we just don't know. So there is a desire to do it. I think that it's a larger problem that needs more thought out and greater thought to it before we kind of do something, because I think the last thing we want to do is pass something and then have to go back and redo it. But sometimes it happens, like the Veterans Bill, properties tax exemption. So just my 2 cents on that housing.
Just to piggyback, as Dan mentioned, one of the first bills I authored this year was to overhaul how we regulate and tax and quite frankly manage short-term rentals in our state. There's been very little regulation at the state level with respect to short-term rentals since they've really proliferated as a result of a greater use of VRBO and Airbnb, for example, online platform. Shortly after Dan was sworn in, he was one of the first co-sponsors of the bill.
Yeah, I think that was like the first bill I co-sponsored.
Yeah. Thanks. I think appreciate the good reps' support on that and partnership on the issue. It's very much an affordability issue. It's, as you mentioned, there are so many homes in Connecticut, in this area in particular, that are being purchased by private equity, and unfortunately, it's very difficult to track ownership, track who is profiting off of these investments. And again, when more and more housing is being purchased for, say, short-term rentals, for example, that's less housing that's available for families to rent, whether it's workforce housing, people who are coming into our area as a result of growth at EB, or so many other great employers we have in our area. I would note that one of the really cool features of that bill, for example, was that it was to create a supplemental tax that municipalities could impose on short-term rentals to the tune of about 2.75% on top of the existing lodging tax, which is about 15%. All taxes that are collected by the state, and the state would then collect that additional tax as well and then remit it back to the municipality, similar to what we do already with cannabis tax revenues. And those funds would have to specifically be deposited into a town's affordable housing trust. So Groton, for example, about maybe two years or so, established an affordable housing trust. And those funds can be used, for example, to begin making critical investments in your community's affordable housing stock, things that I think we can all agree on, and right on track with what Councilor Good has been talking about, the real importance to invest in affordable housing here in Groton, in our entire region. Not every municipality has established affordable housing trust. That has to be done by a vote of their legislative body. So in the case of Groton, Town Council, if it were in Stonington, for example, the Board of Selectmen. But we will continue to make progress on short-term rental reform. I've been working very closely with the chair of the Finance Committee, Maria Horn. We're going to put together a very informal working group so that way we can diligently pass something next year. We have the bones of a really good bill. In many cases, it takes a few years for great concepts to get over the finish line, but it's a strong priority of mine. And if anybody has ideas about how to strengthen that proposal, definitely feel free to share with all three of us. For the things that we really care about, as they know, I'm pretty passionate about this issue. Usually when it comes to things that individual members of this delegation fight for, as as Representative Nolan mentioned, we're not the biggest delegation, but we fight like heck to ensure that we have each other's backs on the issues we care about. So I'm very grateful for their partnership, and that energy is reciprocated for the things they're very passionate about as well.
Yeah, I mean, and to circle back on the delegation point, there's the New Haven delegation that has all the New Haven reps, and then there's the Hartford delegation. We're the Southeastern Connecticut delegation. So we're really working, whether it's, Representative Wilson in Norwich, whether it's Representative Menapace in East Lyme, we're constantly communicating with our neighboring reps down here. And, our priorities are a little bit different, but they're also similar. And Eastern Connecticut, we're kind of the forgotten side of the state, and we make sure that is very well known up in Hartford.
One of the good things is that we very more than occasionally have a very bipartisan delegation where it's both Republican and Democrats that are agreeing on, especially things like tourism, housing. We're not far off from one another, and a lot of people think that Republicans and Democrats in our communities don't get along. We get along very well. It's just the outside look. Society likes to make it seem like we're against each other all the time. We all have our differences in what we want, and we all have our platforms, which can be vastly different. But on some of the things that are important, we do have some allies, but we just wish sometimes they would speak louder. But it's our delegation usually comes together for some of the major issues that we have. But it's just sometimes they get drowned out by the federal delegations, and it's sometimes painful.
I think a good example of that is we had a bill that really restricted some gambling issues. It didn't end up passing, but I remember there was a really loud Southeastern Connecticut contingency on the floor that day, both Republican and Democrat, feeling that the gambling, the legislation in the grand scheme of things may have not been the worst thing in the world, but it completely violated our agreement that we have with the Mashantucket and the Mohegan tribes, in my opinion. I won't speak for these two, but that was where we were all kind of coming together, and I remember texting a Republican colleague, well said. So we had that was an interesting, sometimes it plays out like that, and we all get along very well. I saw a couple other hands up. Councilor Rusk.
Shore Avenue seawall request for SID funding. Anything you can do to continue that push. It is, we're asking for $9.8 million. The town wrote the grant for the city, so it's a big community project, and any help that you can get for that would be wonderful. I know this was a difficult session, but I'm going to throw out school meals for all. I know you were all in support for that, but I'm going to throw it out there again. Please continue to push for that. I see people every day in my line of work who are food insecure, who don't know where their next meal is coming from. So if we can at least feed our children, we give them the basics. We give them toilet paper, we don't give them food. And I know meals got cut this session, and I understand it's a difficult session, but if we can keep pushing for that. Childcare also, I know the governor has that on his agenda, so if we can continue to push for childcare to be funded, that is the way we get people back to work, is by affordable childcare and by paying our childcare providers what they deserve. A lot of these people are college educated and they're making minimum wage. So that is a big push for me. And then anything new on resiliency funding for the area. Thank you.
Do you want to take? I can take. I'll take the seawall, because that's gonna be the death of me. It's a major ask. I know Rep. Bumgardner, myself, Senator Summers have had communications with the governor's office about it. We're going this about regular bonding. I'm not as optimistic as I was about getting that. And then now we're going to go for SIF funding. I plan to meet with members of the SIF board to advocate for Groton's proposal. A lot of times when it comes to grant applications, sometimes you'll put in the full ask, but you'll only get a certain amount of money. You won't get the full ask. So that's something just kind of keep in mind. And for those of you who don't know the Shore Avenue seawall, it is a seawall in the Groton City, in Groton City, by Eastern Point Beach along the river, and it was not structurally sound. So what happened was we went to go fix it. We had it all paid for, and when it happened, it's kind of like your house when you go and fix something, you find some other problems, and it just came in a little bit over budget, and it is over a water pipe, and if that seawall were to collapse, that water pipe could put 1,000 gallons a minute into the Thames River of sewage. So it is like vitally important that we address that seawall, and it's my number one. It's my number one financial ask right now for the region, because at the end of the day, it'll affect New London residents because it could contaminate the Thames River. It affects Groton residents in that same way, but it also affects Groton town taxpayers because the town may have to put up tax dollars for that, and it also affects Groton city taxpayers. So it really does affect everybody in the region. And it is a priority, and it really does need to get done. And any state money that we could potentially get would be a huge help. But no, I've had conversations with the governor's office. I had a brief conversation with somebody at DEEP. I've had conversation, and I'm going to be having conversations to push that SIF application forward. So there are a lot of conversations happening on that one. And then there was school meals and childcare and something else as well. School meals.
Yeah. With resiliency funding, I think we did 75 million in this year's budget. I'll double check on that, but I know that's what we started with. And it was part of this year's climate bill, I think, for community-based resilience planning and projects. It included funding for flood mapping and heat island mitigation. With Brownfield Cleanup and Redevelopment Fund, I think we tried to put in 80 million. I don't know if it went through, the 80 million went through.
For brownfields?
Yeah.
Yes, for the bond bill.
Okay. But, and that's one thing I really got to commend Representative Bumgardner on the amount of environmental bills that got through. Excellent job. I don't remember seeing that many bills go through like they did this year, so congratulations on that.
Yeah, I felt like every other minute we were doing an environmental bill.
Yeah.
I was like, wow, Aundre, you got another bill?
So And DEEP also has that waterway, wetland, and coastal resilience support grant. I think that's up to $1 million also.
It certainly takes a village, and, I think I could say the same last year regarding Veterans Affairs bills. And, so many, up in Hartford, we're dealing with life and death issues, right? Things that intimately affect everyone, whether it's public health, housing issues. But what have found to been put on the back burner for some time has been prioritizing environmental and resilience issues. Certainly an issue we can't ignore in Groton or along our entire coastline. I say this number over and over again, but this district will experience about 20 inches of sea level rise by 2050, and our infrastructure is inadequate to withstand those rising tides. This year we passed SB 9, which was a very, very comprehensive climate resilience bill that will set the stage for municipalities in our state to take bold action to really protect our coastline from these rising sea levels and protect our residents and provide the tools that they need to protect themselves and their properties through this legislation. So some of the highlights. One, updating the state civil preparedness and water plans to address climate impacts, strategies for responding to climate change effects to be included in local, regional, and state plans of conservation and development, towns to consider sea level rise and zoning regs, flood risk disclosures for home buyers and renters. It also expands the eligible uses of municipal town aid road program grants to include projects that increase resilience. Oftentimes, and actually this is a grant even, for example, the city of Groton gets directly as well. Town aid road grants, highly restrictive, sort of requires the grants to be spent only for road improvements. That now it can include the resilience pieces as well, which is great. Oftentimes, our municipalities would have to kind of weigh certain investments in resilience based off of what could be funded by the state, because obviously our towns don't have, they have limited resources as well to use to pay for this important infrastructure. So now that's included, and then also allows municipalities to establish resiliency improvement districts to finance capital projects to address climate change, mitigation, adaptation, or resilience. Similar to what we have already under existing law, the tax increment, our municipal folks here are familiar with the tax incremental financing. We have that in place for Groton, the city of Groton and the town of Groton, for a couple zones that allow for the taxation of a certain area, and all of those revenues can go back to that specific district to pay for infrastructure upgrades, et cetera, or improvements to that district. And so the same logic applies for resilience. You could have an overlay district that funds resilience projects for a certain section of the community that community pays for. So that is I think one of the strongest pieces of SB 9 that we passed. Also passed HB 5004, more of a climate action proposal. Won't go into the details here. It's on page 10 of this handout for those who have it, and was one of the co-authors of that as vice chair of the Environment Committee. This year, I as vice chair of the Environment Committee, brought 9 bills out on the House floor, most of which passed unanimously, as Rep. Nolan mentioned. We are not Washington by any stretch. There's so much that we do that does pass unanimously across party lines in both chambers, and that's why I love serving so much in the state legislature, especially in times like these where it is so polarizing and polarized, especially of issues as great of importance as climate change, which has become a dirty word in Washington. Of course, we still have some colleagues who perhaps don't believe in climate change, but nonetheless, a good chunk of us do recognize that we have to make some changes now. If not, lives will be at risk.
I'll circle back to the question. I want to get back. I just want to address school meals. So we funded school breakfast, but we did not fund school lunches. That came from ARPA money. That was originally funded through American Rescue Plan money, which the money expired for that. So based on the budget is really kind of tight. I know that with federal government not putting up some money, and then with the state spending cap that's constitutional, we could adjust the definition of that, but I'm not going to go down that road. So it made it really hard to kind of do. I know it is a legislative priority of many legislators. I think it's just trying to find a funding source. And then there were concerns with it regarding higher income communities and those children being eligible as well. And then there was also concern of a child taking the meal and then not completing the meal, and then you have food waste. So it was those were some of the concerns, and some of those objections kind of when we're coming up against the clock at the end of the legislative session, sometimes things just don't get to the finish line. But good bills take time. And then childcare, we passed the childcare trust fund, which takes up to $300 million a year in surplus money. So if the state of Connecticut has a budget surplus, currently, because we're at our cap for our rainy day fund, $300 million of that surplus, up to $300 million a fiscal year will go into a child care trust fund. And then anything above that $300 million will go down to pay our pension debt. But that $300 million over time, I believe it gets to $1 billion. 8 to 10% can be used to fund healthcare for child care workers, child care rebates, playing on the word insurance subsidies, tuition for childcare, reducing that cost, raising wages for childcare workers. So it's not going to fix it immediately, but it is going to, over time, be how we fund childcare services in this state of Connecticut. I think it's obviously a huge need for the region. We are a childcare desert here in New London County. We have very limited options and growing families, and it's not right that an individual has to choose between childcare and going to work. So in order to support that, we really need to have a robust program. So that was some really good work. And then public schools are also eligible for that child care money as well. So if public schools want to expand their early childcare education, there is money that they are eligible to apply for to do that.
And making it a trust fund is very important because it's investable. So the treasurer can then essentially invest those funds, and over time, those funds compound.
Will grow.
And
So I will say that I understand that it's an endowment and it has to grow. But one of the things I would have preferred to see was we know that endowment's going to grow. We know an average amount of time that it's going to take for it to get to where we need it to get in order to support the caps to childcare and making it so that people only have to pay the 7% income. I believe that the state of Connecticut should have still put $25 million into child care. And then when the endowment started working, there's your payback right there. It allows us to see and have that tangible, feel that tangible money at the time that we need it. We need it now. We don't need it in 3 years. So we know that endowment's going to grow. We know that it's going to end up being a certain amount of money. So Connecticut, the state, we could have still put in at least $25 million for now to help it. And I hope that when this comes back up, that will be something that we'll be able to push along with other things that we're trying to do. And real quick, Representative Bumgartner glossed over 9 bills going through. That is a Herculean effort. And I just have to say, because I know how humble he is, but that is something that rarely happens up there, having those 9 bills from your committee go through like they did, whether they were combined or whether they were individual bills. That doesn't always happen. So I just needed to say that. That is something that I hope his community is very proud of, because that's something that we really need to make sure we identify.
Yeah, and I know he's super humble, but I know he couldn't have done it without Rep. Gresko, Rep. Mashinsky, Rep. John Michael Parker, Rep. I'm probably missed. There are a lot of environmental advocates in the legislature that have been pushing this for years. And I know when you first got there, you were really big on it. And you guys, the previous session was pretty difficult for you guys, and then now now you finally got it to the finish line. So it just shows that this has been a project. I know Rep. Mashinsky's been there for 40-something years, and she's been working on these environmental issues, and to finally see it get across the finish line, it's just an example that, things do take time.
And I think that also that people are starting to see that the environment is being impacted more than it has ever been impacted before. So for them to get the support that they did, because there were representatives that never supported environmental before, that jumped on it and supported it. So I just thought that was important to say.
Well, they had me at hello, but I'm very lucky to have two really wonderful colleagues. The case of Rep. Nolan, I've known Rep. Nolan since I was a kid.
Thanks, Aundre.
It's almost still am, but to be able to work with him in this capacity to represent this area up in Hartford together, it's really been an honor. And just watching Rep. Gaiewski grow in this role since winning a special election, wasn't elected with, and both of us came on board after Rep. Conley was appointed as a judge. And it's been a privilege to watch you grow in this role, and how attentive you are to the issues. One thing that's really interesting about Rep. Gaiewski is that he is a prolific note-taker in the chamber. Very seldom will you see Rep. Gaiewski leave the chamber. He's really paying attention to the debate. And also keeping track of the votes, and so I just
keeping track of votes. There are times you're on planning and development, right? There was a planning and development bill I had concerns over, and I knew he was on planning and development. I got up and I'm like, you're on planning and development, right? And he's like, yeah. I'm like, can you tell me I'm like, I have concerns about this bill. Can you clarify it for me? So that's really helpful.
Don't let him fool you. We didn't think he was going to come in roaring like he does. He comes in roaring. And when Aundre talks about note taking, it's like a court dictator. he takes notes on everything.
Yep. Comes in handy.
And actually, one last point Councilor Rusk brought up regarding schools, free meals for all. One thing that we should all pay attention to is that at the national level, the Trump administration eliminated the Local Food Purchase Assistance Cooperative Agreement Program and the Local Foods for Schools program, so the LFPA. And that's a huge cause of concern, because that provides about, in the case of Connecticut, $5 million to our schools to purchase food from our local farms. And we all know that our local farms are really struggling. And in many cases, this is, a lifeline to them, so that they can, sustain their farms while also putting fresh produce, local produce, produce where we know it's coming from, onto the plates of our youngsters. And Groton, I know, is a prolific user of this account, and it was eliminated. For what purposes, I don't know. It's cruel. I mean, we're talking about, paying our farmers to put food on the table for our kids. If there's any place for government to step up, it's for programs like that. So, I'm watching that one very closely. I think at a bare minimum, if the federal government will not reverse that cut, There have been many cases where our state, through our Attorney General, has sued the federal government over certain cuts, and those cuts have been reversed. So maybe there's some hope for this program, but if not, this is definitely something that I'll be fighting for next legislative session to get state funding for, to ensure that, you know, our local farmers can still provide you know, produce for our schools.
Yeah, and we did fund CT Grown for Kids a little bit, but not to the amount, not to make the amount that it, because actually in the governor's proposed budget, it was cut entirely. We restored the Connecticut version of the funding, but then the federal, so it's kind of like, you know, we're funding it for what it was at, but it's not where it was. So it's kind of like, you know, we're trying to support our local farmers still, but it's just kind of an interesting predicament we're in right now.
And it's not just schools, it is food banks as well.
Yes.
So, right, so your food shares, your United Ways, it's just, it's cruel. I don't know what other word to use.
And, you know, talking with the Commissioner of Agriculture about this when he came down to Groton was, you know, these contracts that, you know, the way CT Grow for Kids works is the schools apply for a grant and then they purchase the food through local farmers. These local farmers, that these contracts that they get from the school system really helps stabilize their farm and makes their farm be able to keep operating, and it's really essential that we support our agricultural industry here in Connecticut. I think we most of us go to the grocery store and we kind of take it for granted that, you know, some of our food that is coming right here in Connecticut, and we're buying local and supporting local farmers. So it's vitally important that we continue that work.
So Aundre mentioned the big, beautiful bill, and Dan mentioned it a couple times. And, you know, that's a hot topic I know for me. And I really hope that you take time to look through that bill. And if you don't understand bills and you want to go through the bill, I hope you reach out and we'll try and help you understand some of the things that are going to be happening. A lot of things in that bill aren't going to take effect until after election, which is meant to make now there are some okay things in the bill, some things that I know that our federal delegates liked, but they might have not supported the bill, the totality of the bill, but there were some okay things in the bill. Those okay things are the things you're going to see them running on this election year. But it's not showing the things that are going to be painful to the people right after election. They're going to make it look like they put all these good things in the bill, and right on January 1, things are going to start hitting hard because they're going to be elected, if they're elected back in, because of what they're trying to say they're doing. And probably in the next couple of weeks, you'll see some Facebook Lives that are going to be showing you different parts of the bill where it's really going to hurt people versus help people. You know, everybody's getting all excited about these taxes that they might be saving in the next year or so, but that's only going to be for a couple of years. It goes right back to what it was before. So please, if you don't know about what that bill says, reach out to our office or reach out to the federal delegation and find out, because there's a plethora of stuff in there that is going to tear our communities apart. That's going to make it look like that they're going to be, we're going to be the ones to have to recuperate what is being done in this bill. And it's going to make it look like that, you know, that everything's all peachy, and it's not. So I just want people to pay attention to when people are talking about it. The most important thing is the fact check. And we've had a lot of people in our office, and the federal delegation have had a lot of people fact check, and it's nonpartisan. If it's not nonpartisan, then I usually don't follow it. So just pay attention.
For example, we have great legislative resources. This document that we have created here was created by the Office of Legislative Research and Office of Fiscal Analysis, which are two nonpartisan organizations that all members of the legislature, Republican and Democrat, have access to. We can put in any legislative requests. So, for example, when I used to be a staffer before I was a representative, I would do these requests all the time, and sometimes it would just find out if something was existing law or the actual definition of a law. And then if you ever have any state bill concerns, you can contact any one of our offices. I'm pretty good at getting information quickly through the Office of Legislative Research, and if not, I can mostly do it on my own. But just reach out to our office. I know all of our contact information is on the tables there. So there's that's one thing that we can really do. And then we kind of know where the good, the bad is, and kind of navigating it, and and then you can determine as a citizen what is best for you. Are there any other questions? I know we haven't asked that. Yes, Deputy Mayor Depot.
Whatever you call the deputy mayor in the city of Groton, where the seawall is. So I know that the SIF funding, that was kind of our next step. So if you're not hopeful for us receiving full or partial funding from that, is there another venue or another funding source that's kind of on your mind, or that we can look for, that we could start looking into now? And what is there a timeline on that SIF funding, or when we will know the answer of whether or not that's coming?
Can you pull up Rep. Bumgardner? So let me re-clarify. I'm not optimistic of regular general bonding, which was another request we put in. I am more optimistic of SIF, because there is the way, for those of you who don't know how the community investment fund works. The community investment fund is for municipalities that are either defined distressed or an alliance district. Groton is eligible for that because we are an alliance district, and we're kind of on the border of a distressed municipality. A distressed municipality, the definition, I'm paraphrasing here, is something that is like not having as much economic growth as it should or as it expected to. So we're kind of on the bubble of that. Really, it depends on the development of what's going on at EB that determines if we're a distressed municipality or not. So it really kind of varies. So right now, the SIF round applications, I know that the SIF board will be getting their packets in late August to start reviewing the proposal. So personally, I know I'm going to be talking with a couple of the SIF board members before them to kind of put it on their radar. And then, I know Rep. Nolan with a couple other projects that happened in New London that were awarded SIF funding. He consistently followed up with members of the board. And then I don't know, this is SIF round 7. I believe it's December we'll have an answer on that. And then there are tons of other sources of funding for tons of projects. I know I've had conversations with DEEP, I've had conversations with DOT, and I just, to apply for a grant, there are so many niche things, and something so small could hinder you not applying for that. From a perspective, I know I'm having communication with Mayor Hedrick and Town Manager Burt about this, and I am looking, I believe you've been looking as well, for other funding sources. So we're kind of trying to navigate it as best we can. But, I think hopefully we'll eventually get a yes on solving this issue, because it is vitally important, but it's something that's of concern and a priority.
Well, I would caution at just opining on whether or not something will ultimately get funded or not. We still haven't received any response from the state on SIF grant applications. There hasn't been a bond commission meeting since we've even talked about looking at bonding as a funding solution for the seawall. So we've been meeting on this as a delegation for months, working very closely with the governor's office on this, with the mayor and many of the city staff. Obviously, the town had to submit the grant because technically every borough for fire district in the state, if they are to apply for SIF funds, they have to do it through through the kind of overarching town or municipal structure. So in that case, it'd be the town. But still, the city has been providing information to the delegation, has provided information to the delegation already, submitted these grant applications. So The grant application for SIF is in. We should hear back. They'll be making a decision in late fall, early winter. And then in the case of bond commission, the governor hasn't yet set the bond commission meeting date yet. Previous governor, Malloy, he would have a bond commission meeting every month, a standing bond commission meeting, so you would at least know that there was a chance a project could get funding, but it's always a guessing game with this governor. He certainly practices what he preaches in terms of being fiscally responsible. He's very hesitant to support bonding that he hasn't personally signed off on, that, where, many cases that organization, nonprofit, or effort is kind of engaging in a full court press lobbying effort to the governor, explaining why this project is so important. And we've already had many of those meetings with his chief of staff directly on the seawall. I would note Groton is not alone in seeking money, really emergency funding for a critical infrastructure project. Our friends to the north in Norwich have a very similar issue where they're going to require about $10 million. So we've also been working closely with Senator Austin, the Norwich delegation, to see if we can combine forces as we're sort of lobbying the governor to set aside $10 million in bonding for both of those projects. So stay tuned. I remain cautiously optimistic, but it really is an important project given the really, honestly, the public safety concerns of so many residents along Eastern Point Beach.
Yeah.
You talked about a few other ways to get funding. We talked about that in New London. There's a good 5 or 6 other places that you might be able to look into. Clean Water Revolving Loan Fund under DEEP is one. They can support flood control, drainage, or upgrades to seawall adjacent to storm systems. You got the Property Assessed Resilience. You have DEEP's Climate Resilience Fund. And
There's like 2 more.
Circa.
Yep.
And that's low income. So there's, Deep Clean Water. It's a low grant. It's only like $5,000, but hey, a little bit helps, with what you're trying to do. So there's a few other spots.
Yeah, and then the problems I've been in my conversation, I had a conversation with a representative at DEEP, and there, the grant is like $500,000, and I mean it's better than nothing, but it's just kind of like where, and then also is like, even as I know Rep Nolan had mentioned some of those programs. There's tons of programs out there. It's just kind of finding the right fit, and it's really kind of, I know you have a good working relationship with DEEP as well, and it's like, kind of, there's certain things you can do, there's certain parameters around a whole bunch of things, so it's really kind of navigating those parameters. It's something that we're working on almost every day, just trying to figure something out, and it's nothing's come. I know he's cautiously optimistic, but I'm the pessimist of the delegation, and I'm like,
And the worst is seeing a tailor-made federal grant program. In this case, it was the BRIC acronym. That's the acronym. What it stands for, the name escapes me. But it was tailor-made for this project. And of course, a few months ago, the feds eliminated the program. So.
I would apply for everything. I think the biggest issue is the amount of paperwork that some of it takes, and then to turn around and be told no the first time. But sometimes being told no can be good, because the next time it comes up, maybe it gives you a better opportunity, and then you already have the grant ready to go anyway. So I would just flood the system with requests to try and get what you need, and then people start seeing and hearing, Dad, Groton's trying to ask for a lot, or New London's trying to ask for so much. Okay, out of something, we got to get a little something. Yeah. So keep pushing.
And one other point, especially with Rep Nolan mentioned sort of how many of the really ugly pieces of this big, beautiful bill won't go into effect after the election season. And so the same thing applies to a lot of programs that, or grant programs through, say, the Inflation Reduction Act or American Rescue Plan, bipartisan infrastructure law. A lot of those grant programs that they're starting to sunset, they have obviously a deadline, right? So take advantage of this time too to also apply for grants that you know are not going to be available for the next 5-10 years potentially at the federal government side, because we also don't want to leave money on the table either. So I only say that because there's still a lot of opportunities, especially in the case of solar programs. The solar market's about to get completely devastated, whether it's the residential level or the ability to site solar panels on schools, which we've done. But the Green Bank reached out earlier today regarding seeing if Groton would be interested in solarizing the remainder of schools that are on the Eversource side of Groton, and that would include Fitch High School, for example, because there is some money that will be set aside and that the Green Bank can tap into that would allow Groton to basically solarize their school buildings at a very, actually no cost whatsoever, and still see some form of payback. You're not going to see any form of payback after a lot of the solar tax credits expire. So that's just something to keep in mind. It doesn't just apply to energy projects. There are so many other grant opportunities that all of our communities and nonprofits should be taking advantage of.
I'm sorry, could you, Representative Nolan, could you repeat the first fund, the Clean Water Fund?
Clean Water Revolving Loan Fund through DEEP.
One more time.
Clean Water Revolving Loan Fund.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I do think that's a loan though, right?
But it has grants too.
Okay.
And I know we're getting close to the ending. If folks have not signed in, I would only ask that you sign in. That way we have your contact information. In the case that you're not on our email list, we'll be sure to add you. I send a weekly email list. I think.
I'm on all your email lists. And if you can reply to our email list. If you reply to our email, it goes directly to us. It does not go to staff. It goes directly to us. So, for example, I have nonprofit leaders in my community who have automatic replies set up on my weekly e-blasts, and I get an automatic reply from them. Sorry, I'm out of the office. But it's just something that is another way that you can communicate with us. It goes directly to us. And even if it's not a response to the e-blast and it's something else, that's another way you can communicate with us.
Something that people tend to think is, I'll say for me, I won't speak for my brothers over here, but people say, oh, they're too busy, or they're not going to have time. If you don't reach out with a question that you have, somebody else is going to take up that space to reach out. And we try and be as valuable as we can. So please do not think that we're too busy. We have staff, and I know that many of us try to get back to you if you send us an email. No question's a silly question. So please reach out, because if you don't, someone else is just going to reach out and take up the time. And I'd rather see constituents that are really involved or really concerned about things get the attention than those who send a lot of negative stuff or just try and fill our time with us having to do a little bit of research for the things that, probably might not be always important as yours.
Yeah, I normally get back within 2 to 3 days at the latest, and that's normally when we're deep in session. But if it's something really urgent, we can handle that right away. And if you have me, just be careful you spell my last name correctly, because that does happen. That's just something to focus on. And then I check sometimes things go to spam or junk, and I check that relatively a couple times a month. So if it is in there and it's a later response, I'll also let you know that too. That's happened because I had somebody who reached out to me and I didn't get back to them for 2 weeks because they were in spam. So just kind of happy to help in any way we can.
Does anybody have final questions?
Yep.
Roscoe?
First, I want to thank you on the efforts for the seawall. I've been involved in it for quite some time, from past years on the RTM and town council. And I was kind of surprised at the back half of the second half and the way it turned out and the money's required for it. But I'm going to go back to 1968 when the town of Groton had a sewer backup down in Palmer Cove. And until we got that fixed, the state of Connecticut said, we will fine you X number of dollars per day until you get it cleaned up. And that's what could happen. There is a sewer line on the Shore Avenue, and that could happen down there. And that's major right there because that's at the mouth of the river. So I want to thank you for your efforts on that. And this issue of the roundabouts just coming through the state, that was a nice presentation the state presented to the council. However, I think they missed mentioning eminent domain within that. It's going to occur from time to time, and I caution them to really look hard at that. But I'm part of the eminent domain back to my father's dairy farm at the top of Fort Hill. We got like $30,000 for all of that up there for Route 215, which at that time was supposed to continue on to Long Island from 117, and that never came about.
Thank God.
But it took away a dairy farm and a business. And a lot of these roundabouts could encroach upon that. So I caution the state to look very carefully at it.
I know.
It would cost a lot in litigation.
I know the one that was presented to the council didn't have any eminent domain issues with it. Possibly, I know there's a proposal to do something at Route 184. Yeah. Yep, 17, thank you.
Property and a business that somebody had. So that's my thoughts on that. I like the idea. It really does a lot. It increases the safety. It cuts back on the traffic lights, which I understand are expensive. But when you start telling somebody they gotta pack up and move, then they're gonna become offensive.
And I just want to say I was very encouraged by the town council by moving forward with the proposal to build roundabouts on Allen Street, for example. I think that will go a long way to enhance public safety. Even the police chief referenced that it can be a tool to
That one, absolutely.
to improve particular to slow down driving speeds and to increase traffic flow. So it has been a proven method to do it everywhere it's been deployed. I know my usual
You don't have to crane your neck to look at Allen Street or Collier Road, and then snap back to look at Sandy Hollow coming out at you as you take a right-hand turn to go to Mystic.
Of course.
Yep.
Yeah, it can be very unsafe. So
I'm surprised there hasn't been a major accident.
And there have been.
Yeah, there's been accidents there, but it's like that's exit 89 off of 95 for anyone who.
But I would also note that because of your actions, Groton's in a better position to maximize the amount of dollars, federal reimbursement, for example. It's going to be funded to the tune of 80% by the feds, which is very significant for about a $12 million project. So I'm a big believer if you can take advantage of more money from federal government and as much money as possible as from the state money to defray the costs that would be imposed to our local taxpayers. As the council knows, that a lot of bridge projects, for example, the town's sometimes on the hook for. So you have to kind of engage in some innovative solutions to figure out a way to kind of defray those costs. So, I think those partnerships between the town and the state are so important, especially given that we have to reinvest in so much of our critical infrastructure. There's projects everywhere that need to get done across our whole town.
Shore Avenue was a surprise, however, there's gonna be more surprises involving seawalls around the town because of climate change.
Right.
But that one in particular would dump a lot of sewerage into the mouth of the river if that pipe in the road ever broke.
That's right.
We are over based on what our wonderful outreach coordinator, Greg, who is here with us this evening.
Yes, Greg.
Thank you, Greg.
Thank you, Greg.
Greg is part of, we share Greg, so in the house, we share staff. So for example, for our outreach coordinator, we all have Greg. Greg kind of does our region stuff down here for us. And then my constituent coordinator is Barry, yours is Noah, yours is Francisco, and then we have a press secretary that we share all of our staff with other reps. So my aide Barry, he has 2 other reps, and I believe you guys have 2 or 3 other your aides have. So we all kind of share staff as well. So we are lucky to have Greg part of Team Southeastern Connecticut, and
Yes.
thank him for helping us set this up this evening and for all that he does for us in our own legislative offices. So it's much appreciated.
And I want to thank you all for joining us. We will be having another town hall meeting in New London across the river. Do we have the exact date for that yet?
Not yet.
Not yet. So
Probably
stay
before-
tuned for that.
Hopefully before the end of the month.
Yes. Thank you all for coming.
Coming.